The executive parking lot was nearly empty under the harsh afternoon sun, except for a single luxury sedan and a small figure sitting quietly on the concrete steps in front of the Hartwell Industries headquarters. Her knees were scraped, her ponytail slightly undone, and her small hands clutched a crumpled envelope, the one her mother had accidentally dropped while rushing into her job interview. The little girl had knocked on the glass doors earlier, her tiny fist thudding against the tinted surface while security cameras recorded her from above. She hadn't meant to cause trouble, she simply wanted to return the letter and maybe ask a question that had been forming in her heart since the move. When the glass doors slid open, it wasn't her mother who stepped out, it was a man in a tailored navy suit with deep lines etched into his expression. His name was Daniel Hartwell, and while his appearance was as composed as ever, his world had begun to crack beneath the surface. He had just come from a tense boardroom meeting in which his leadership had been quietly, but unmistakably, challenged. Rumors of a potential merger with Titan Build, a massive and morally questionable construction conglomerate, were gaining traction, and several shareholders had begun speaking in hushed tones about replacement strategies and silent votes of no confidence. Daniel hadn't slept more than 3 hours the night before. He wasn't expecting to see a child sitting alone on the steps of his building, nor was he prepared for the strange silence that fell over the space when their eyes met. The girl stood up, dusting off her shorts, and held out the envelope with both hands. She had a small bruise on her elbow, and her t-shirt featured a worn cartoon bunny that had clearly survived many laundry cycles. She couldn't have been older than 5 or 6. "You dropped this," she said plainly. "My mommy dropped it, but it's important, I think." Daniel took the envelope, recognized the header, Human Resources, Administrative Assistant Interview Pack, and nodded slowly. He glanced toward the doors, then back at the girl. "Thank you," he said, his voice more tired than he intended. The girl didn't smile. Instead, she tilted her head the way children do when they're studying a face to figure out whether someone is safe or sad. "You look like my mommy when she's trying not to cry," she said, almost as if stating a fact about the weather. Daniel blinked. He was too exhausted to fake a smile and too moved to look away. The child sat back down on the steps and patted the concrete beside her, gesturing with innocent confidence. "I'm Ava," she said. "Do you want to sit for a minute? It helps when your heart feels weird." Daniel didn't know why he did it, but he sat. Expensive suit and all, he lowered himself next to the child and allowed the silence to wrap around them like a thin blanket. "My name is Daniel," he said quietly. "Daniel Hartwell." Her eyes widened a little. "Hartwell like the building? Are you the guy in charge?" "I'm the CEO," he confirmed. She considered that for a moment, her expression unreadable. "Do you like being the boss?" The question landed with surprising weight. Daniel exhaled, glanced at the towering glass windows reflecting the sunlight behind them, and replied honestly. "Sometimes. But it can be very lonely." Ava nodded solemnly, as if she already knew what he meant. "My daddy died on a building site. That's why we moved here. Mommy said this place was safer and had better jobs. She says brave people keep going even when their hearts get broken." Daniel felt something constrict in his chest. The mention of a building site, of loss, of trying to start over, it all struck too close to home. He had reviewed hundreds of site reports and accident claims in his time, but he had never connected them to a child's scraped knee and soft voice. "She also says," Ava continued, looking up at him seriously, "that being sad doesn't mean you're broken forever. Just means you need someone to sit next to you for a while." For a moment, Daniel forgot the merger, the shareholders, the strained silence of the boardroom. All he could focus on was this child, her dirt-streaked shoes and the way she offered truth like a gift no one else dared to give him. "I think your mommy is very wise," he murmured. "She is," Ava replied with no hesitation, and then, without ceremony, she asked, "Do you want to be my friend?" Daniel turned to her, startled. There was no agenda in her voice. No calculation. No flattery. It was a pure offer. A simple, absurdly human question that struck deeper than any business proposal ever had. "I'd be honored," he said, realizing just how much he meant it. Her face lit up in a way that reminded him of things he had forgotten: laughter in kitchens, the sound of sneakers on wooden floors, the quiet warmth of belonging. Just then, the building's main doors opened again, and a young woman stepped out, eyes scanning frantically until they landed on the small figure sitting beside the CEO of the company she'd just interviewed with. The woman hurried forward, her expression a complicated blend of relief and dread. Her heels clicked across the concrete as she called out, "Ava." The little girl turned, grinned, and waved. "Mommy. This is my new friend. He's the boss of everything." Rebecca Parker slowed as she approached, catching sight of Daniel Hartwell and registering who he was in the same instant. She visibly tensed. Her hand instinctively went to Ava's shoulder, both protective and apologetic. "I'm so sorry," she said quickly, her cheeks flushing. "I told her to wait inside, but she insisted on coming out. I hope she wasn't bothering you, Mr. Hartwell." Daniel rose to his feet, brushing his hands against his trousers without concern for the dust. "Not at all. We were just talking." Rebecca looked between the two of them, clearly trying to reconcile the image of her daughter sitting on the steps with the man whose name was printed on every wall in the building. "She tends to connect easily," she explained, glancing down at Ava. "She also listens well," Daniel replied. "And speaks better truth than most of my board." Rebecca gave a polite, nervous smile, unsure if he was being literal or simply kind. "I hope your interview went well," Daniel said, tone softening. Rebecca's shoulders loosened a bit. "I think so. They said they'd call by Friday. I'm grateful to be considered." Daniel hesitated for a moment, then said, "You're new to the city." She nodded. 3 months. We came from Lansing. My husband, he passed away last year. Site collapse. Faulty rigging. The words hung in the air between them, heavier than anything Daniel had heard in a board meeting. He felt his breath stall. His company had recently approved a subcontract with Titan Build, and while he didn't know every detail, he had read too many accident reports that looked far too similar. "I'm sorry," he said. "Thank you," Rebecca replied, her voice steady. "It's been hard, but we're trying to start over." For her. Ava, now back at ease, tugged on Daniel's sleeve. "Do you want to see my lucky rock?" Without waiting for permission, she pulled a small, smooth stone from her pocket and placed it in his palm. "It helps when things are scary," she said seriously. "Like interviews or being the boss." Daniel looked down at the stone as if it were something sacred. It was perfectly round and cool in his hand. He had held millions of dollars in gemstones, property deeds, and signed contracts, but nothing ever felt quite like that rock. Because it came from trust. From belief. "Would you let me borrow it?" he asked. Ava considered him, then nodded. "But only if you promise to give it back next time. Friends return lucky things." "I promise," he said quietly. Rebecca watched this exchange with wonder in her eyes. Not confusion. Not suspicion. Just the silent, maternal recognition that something rare had happened. Something good. "Would you both join me for dinner?" Daniel asked suddenly, as if the idea had only now become inevitable. "There's a place nearby with grilled cheese sandwiches even I can't mess up." Rebecca hesitated, visibly surprised. "Mr. Hartwell, that's very generous, but I wouldn't want to." "It's not charity," he interrupted gently. "It's friendship. And I genuinely enjoy the company." Ava looked up at her mother with pleading eyes. "Please, Mommy. He's really nice." Rebecca relented with a small laugh. "All right. But only if Ava behaves." Dinner was at a cheerful diner tucked between office buildings, the kind of place with crayons on the tables and menus shaped like rocket ships. Ava talked nearly non-stop, asking Daniel if cranes could fall asleep and whether the boss had to do homework. Rebecca shared stories from their hometown, from her past work organizing employee wellness programs in their local union, work Daniel found himself unexpectedly fascinated by. For the first time in months, Daniel didn't feel the pull of his phone or the itch of unread emails. He laughed without needing to impress anyone. He listened without needing to calculate anything. And when Ava handed him a drawing, two stick figures standing next to a square building labeled "Friends Forever," he nearly cried into his coffee. That night, back in his penthouse, he placed the drawing on his desk and the Lucky Rock beside it. He stared at them for a long time. Then he opened his laptop, pulled up the internal shareholder proposal from Titan Build, and hit reject. He followed it with a message to his executive team requesting an emergency meeting. The next morning, Daniel stunned the board by announcing a new initiative: Hartwell Industries would not be pursuing the merger. Instead, they would launch the Family First Initiative, a comprehensive in-house program for employees with children, single parents, and grieving families. And he had someone in mind to lead it. He called Rebecca personally. "Not only would I like to offer you the administrative assistant position," he said, "but I want to create a role that doesn't exist yet, Director of Family Services. You'd be perfect for it." Rebecca was speechless. "Mr. Hartwell, I don't know what to say." "Say you'll let Ava stop by the office now and then," Daniel replied. "I think we could use a consultant who understands what really matters." 6 months later, Hartwell Industries had the highest employee satisfaction rating in its history. Ava visited often, offering critiques on snack selections and coloring with Daniel during breaks. One afternoon, while drawing a bulldozer with green wings, she looked up and asked, "Are you still lonely sometimes?" Daniel smiled, then leaned forward. "Not anymore," he said. "Not since you knocked on my door." She nodded as if she had known the answer all along. That's what friends are for. And on his desk, beside the legal briefs and executive memos, the smooth gray stone still rested quietly, a reminder that miracles often arrive without fanfare, wearing bunny t-shirts, carrying courage in their pockets, and asking only for a little bit of kindness in return.